by ship. It's only a fifth the size of the American mastodons with their 100 jets on board. But no call to apologize for the skill, the competence of the crew.
You need certain basic skills to sail a ship, and you need certain basic skills to fly a jet. But to fly a jet off a ship, you need more than basic skill. The pilot on a carrier has to deal with a runway that could be 30 miles away from where he left it when he took off, sailing a zigzag course. May not have told him because it's keeping radio and radar silence, showing no lights to avoid detection. And when he finds it, if he finds it, the deck will be 60 feet above the water, which makes visual reference difficult. It will be bucking and pitching and rolling capriciously, erratically. The strain is enormous, unnatural. The Navy knows it, and the men who train the Navy pilots know it, and the pilots themselves know it, but they have a tongue-in-cheek perversity about saying so. It often seems to me that it takes a sadist to have thought up the idea of landing a jet on the deck of an aircraft carrier which has moved several miles away from where it was when you first left it. How do you find your way back?
How do we find a way back? It really is straightforward. You know the launch position, you know where the ship's, the mean line of advance, you know the recovery position, and as long as they stick pretty roughly to that, then it's absolutely straightforward. The navigation system can predict the position of the ship. You've got a radar to find the ship, you've got ship's radars, if it needs be, to get yourself back to the ship. It's a non-event, it really is. And in some ways it's easier than finding an airfield, because it's there and it's unmistakable. In poor weather, finding an airfield can sometimes be difficult, because it blends in with the background, for example. Well, the ship never does that. You know it's an aircraft carrier, you know it's there bobbing up and down, it's unmistakable. So it really isn't a problem.
But in wartime, when you're having radio silence,
right,
and it is manoeuvring.
Right. Well, that's when the problems come, when the ship is radio and radar silent, when you're required to be radio and radar silent within a given range, and you don't have any other aids to get back. It's a cross between mental DR and using the inertial kit in the aeroplane to come back to a rough position and hope to find the ship. You always reserve the right, of course, that when the fuel's getting low and you really don't know where the ship is, all those rules go out of the window for aircraft safety, even in a war. But we managed in the Falklands without any instances, I think, without any instances at all, to get back to the ship in completely radio and radar out during the daylight hours. And there were no problems.
When the helicopters patrolled for as long as 6 hours without a break, Invincible could have covered a couple of 100 miles.
Look, supposing there was a real shooting war, and you go out and you detect a submarine. You send signals back to Invincible. There's a submarine, the area. Invincible then changes course very fast indeed to get the hell out. And because there's radio silence, doesn't tell you that it isn't where you left it. How do you get home?
Well, there are going to be some problems with that. We rely very heavily...
I like you calling them some problem. Seems to me an enormous problem.
Hopefully not, because we spend a great deal of care and attention in our briefing procedures and in our means of knowing what people are going to be doing, and if they're unable to do it, alternative plans. It may be that, in fact, we're Invincible required to go at very short notice, fast, a long distance away from us, then indeed we would have to go and land on another vessel, perhaps a Royal Fleet Auxiliary, or indeed one of the Type 22 frigates that might be operating with us. So we would plan the contingencies to make sure that if it really was not essential, or it was essential rather, to send Invincible away at that sort of short notice, that we would have alternatives up our sleeve, as it were, to ensure that we weren't a wasted asset and unable to get home. It might be true that in the real heat of war, the command may have to make a decision that an aeroplane is less important than some other particular task that has to be done, and that would indeed be one of the more difficult but often essential command decisions made at sea.
So in the worst case, you would be expendable?
I don't think expendable. I think if one is expendable, one would feel there was no way that one would recover or survive. Certainly the aeroplane would have to land on the sea if it couldn't find anywhere else to go, but we would then hope that in a later stage, rescue operations would be conducted and we carry a great deal of equipment to assist people in relocating us. But I would personally feel that would be a very extreme situation.
But it's landing at night that really separates the men from the boys.
Well, again, that concentrates the mind a little, just because of the lack of visual references. And all you've got is a couple of lights, a centerline light, a glide path indication. And of course, they tend to go awry if the ship's rolling a lot, rolling or pitching a lot.
What makes you take on the sort of extra misery of flying for the Navy?
Extra enjoyment, extra satisfaction. There's no misery at all. Not
Now
at
come,
all.
you could have had a lovely time in the RAF. Nice fixed airfields, diversionary airfields, all these things laid out on a map, instead of hunting for a little carrier in the middle of the sea.
I'd have been bored, I think.
Would you?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Not every good pilot's got the right temperament. Often take the strain. Not just the strain of flying from a drunken rolling runway, but the strain of a weapon and a radar system that would normally be the work of 2 men in a 2-seat jet. Invincible's deck can't take the extra weight. They're precious, these Harrier pilots. Cost the Navy £4,287,000 to train, and leave all too rapidly for richer, quieter lives with the airlines.
I've grown since I wore that last.
Helicopter pilots have different pressure. Long, wearing 6-hour patrols, piecing the seas for submarines. Off they set for work like businessmen carrying their briefcases. Their takeoffs and landings every bit as hazardous as a Harrier's.
Six hours up there isn't easy. When you slow down, you're totally, you're drained, full stop. Your brain, your body is drained.
What we do is you get airborne for 5 hours and you're there constantly. From, I'd say, an hour and a half before you take off, you brief, yeah? From that time onwards until you land on, an hour after, that's about nine hours at a time. You're there, you're mentally stressed and that, because the fact you're flying and that all the time. And your workload is at the limit. And you come down, you are shattered.
You come down, you
get
debrief.
8 to 10 hours off, and then you're up
You're
again,
up again.
starting again.
You debrief, you get something to
continuous.
eat, and away you go again, you get a shake, right, briefing so-and-so. Same briefs, up you go again, do the same,
If you've got an exercise now for about, say, 6 weeks, and that's all we have, it's constant 6 weeks of hard work, non-stop. And at the end of the 6 weeks, you are really shattered, you are worn down.
You're either sleeping, flying, or eating. That's all you do for the whole 24-hour period. You actually lose track completely of time.
Right through the ship, relentless pressure. Not just aircrew, everyone. 24 hours a day for the 2, 3, 4 months that they're at sea. It's a less comfortable, more restless ship, since the Navy found it could cram Harriers and more helicopters on board. Crew size near doubled.
It's very tight, isn't it?
Very tight.
Yes. Which is yours?
Mine's the top bunk at the back there. You get used to it. It's not too bad in a mess this size. The only problems we really have is, if you can see on the right there, is that the actual lockers are right next to the beds. When you've got 6 guys that have got out at the same time into the lockers, everybody starts climbing over the top of each other and trying to get past and get out. That's the only problem we have, really.